Hello, hello. Welcome. I am here to go over offers. So to do that first, before we start going into offers, you need to understand um, what's going on with the contract. So let's first go over a 1 to 4 contract. So I'm gonna just pull up a new transaction. We can just call this 123 Main Street. Typically, what we'll do is we'll do the address first, then the dash, and then we'll do the client's name. So we'll just say Adam. I'll do with me, okay? It'll be for a purchase, residential, and then we'll save that. Okay, so the first thing, as you should know from the other recordings that you've had with zip forms, is going to be first thing you go to is your library. You want to make sure you select all because these are all different sources that they pull documents from. So I always want to make sure that this is selected on all. Okay, and then here you can do your sorting shortcut to find the correct contracts, or you can just scroll down. We'll do 1 to 4. Okay, this is the first contract right here, so let's go through this one. Okay, so this is a 1 to 4 residential contract. This is for single family homes. Um, and again, 1 to 4, up to 4 units. Okay, so number one, parties. So one thing to note is that anytime you have a section, you're going to have a number, and then you're going to have something in bold. And what's in bold pretty much tells you what the rest of the paragraph is about. So number one says parties. So this talks about the parties to the contract. So the parties are, there's a blank, and then it says seller. So you put the seller's name here. Then it says blank buyer. You put the buyer's name here. Okay, that's it for the section. Okay. Two, property. Talks about land. Okay, talks about improvements, accessories, and exclusions. So land, what does that mean? Well, where is the property? Where is it located at? What's the common address? So for example, depending on the county and the state, you're gonna put something for lot, block, and you'll put something here. It says city here, it says county here, and it also says known as. And known as is the common address, but lot, block, and this other information is what's called the legal address of the property. Okay, so that's what you put there, and you get that from the county property search websites as well as the MLS sometimes. Improvements just tells you what improvements are, just kind of defines it. Things that are permanently installed into the home. Talks about accessories, and then exclusion. This is where you put things that are an accessory or an improvement to the home, but you don't want to go with the house. So it might be curtain rods, even though they're attached to the house and technically they're supposed to go with the house. You would put, if your grandmother made you the curtains or made you the curtain rods and you didn't want them to go to the buyer, you would put excluding curtain rods. Or big screen TV if it was attached to the wall, things like that. On number 3, it says sales price. So here's where you're going to talk about the sales price for the home that you're offering or putting the property under contract for. A says the cash portion of sales price payable by the buyer at closing. So what this is, if you're financing a deal, and this is where you want to take notes. If you're financing a deal, this is where you're going to put the down payment amount. Okay, if you're paying cash for a property, you're going to put the full amount you're paying cash, because again, this is the cash portion of the sales price. So if you're paying cash to a cash portion of the sales price, it's the whole thing. The cash portion to a finance deal is your down payment. Okay? B is the sum of all finance. So sum of all financing. It says third party financing, loan assumption addendum, seller financing addendum. Basically what B is saying is how much of the sales price are you financing, or how much of the sales price is not going to be paid for with cash from the buyer. Okay, so if you're using a bank, this is going to be the finance part, so the sales price minus the down payment, which is the loan amount. If you're paying cash, it's going to be 0 because you're not financing anything. You're going to click here So if you're financing with a bank or anyone else, you can do third-party financing addendum. If you're financing with a seller, like doing an owner finance, or the seller is carrying the note, then you're going to click this, and there's another document that goes with it. Okay, and then C is just the sales price of C is the sales price, which is the sum of A and B. Okay, let's go down. So we got 4. So license holder disclosure. So you can read through this, but this is basically just disclosing if the party does have a real estate license. Earnest money, number 5. Earnest money is AKA deposit. Okay, it's basically letting the seller know that you're serious about buying the property and you're putting some money down up front. Now, when you buy a house, it's called earnest money. In other situations, it's just called deposit. Okay, so you're going to put the amount of the deposit, the earnest money here. You're going to put, if you already know the escrow agent at the title company, it's going to be managing the file. You're going to put their name here. And then here, you put the address of the title company so everyone knows where the title company is located. Okay. Sometimes this information is in the MLS. Sometimes you have to get it from the listing agent. Sometimes they don't know yet. You know, if it's a foreclosure or the listing agent doesn't have this particular escrow officer yet, they don't know yet. So sometimes when you make an offer or put something in the contract, you just have to leave this blank and wait for further instructions. And then this down here is basically saying if you're going to do a 2-part. So if you're going to put up this amount of money first, and then later you'll put up this amount of money within this amount of days. We typically don't do that, but that's what those spots are for. So, but normally, you're just going to put the earnest money here, put the escrow officer's name here, leave it blank, put the address of the title company here, leave it blank, and you'll just put NA here, NA here. Okay. Title policy and survey. So this is basically saying who's going to pay for the title policy. The title policy tells you some more things down here that you can read, but basically is just an insurance policy verifying that there's no back taxes on the property, things like that. That when the buyer purchased the property, they're getting it in clear title. So you're going to check whether it's the seller or the buyer paying the title policy, and then you're going to type in the title company. Okay. Here is a new section they added maybe about 2 years ago, where if there's some adjustments, meaning if there's some adjustments or exceptions that need to be added to the title policy by the title company, they just want to know, do you guys want to include that, and then do you want the buyer to seller to pay for it? Okay, so typically on regular deals, if you're the buyer on our side, you're always going to check that it will be amended to read. So you'll check this one, not the first one, because it says will not. This one says will be, so you'll check this one for the buyer, and then you'll check for the seller to pay for it. Okay, if we're the seller, then you're going to check for the buyer to pay for it. Okay, it's non-negotiable. If it's a foreclosure, you're just going to leave it blank. Okay, next part is the survey right here. So for the survey, if it's a regular deal, when I say regular deal, just know I mean there's just a regular individual, a regular family that is selling the home, not a bank, not a foreclosure, things like that, not a HUD home. Okay, so if it's a regular deal on the survey, you're gonna check the first one if they have a survey. You're gonna ask them to. Our norm is about 15 days for them to turn in the survey when our closing dates are longer than 30 days. If our closing dates are shorter than 30 days, then you want to put something like 7 days or 10 days. Okay, but normally we'll put 15 days, and then if we're the buyer, we're going to ask for the seller to pay for a new one. Okay, basically what I'm saying is, if hey seller, if I'm the buyer, hey seller, if you already have a survey, please give it to us within 15 days. If you don't, or it's not acceptable by the bank, or by me or the title company, then we want you to go ahead and buy a new one. Okay. If we're the seller, then we sometimes will do that, ask the buyer to pay for it. Okay, but it's all negotiable. Okay, so that's if you think there's a chance the seller has a survey. If you know for sure that the seller doesn't have a survey on a regular deal, you're going to check one of these. This one is if you know for sure that there is no survey, and that this says that the buyer is going to pay for a new one. Okay, this one is saying that the seller is going to pay for a new one. Okay, so this is when you know for sure that there is no survey, and you're just going to go ahead and just, start negotiating. That's one party's going to pay for it. Okay. Now, point thing to remember: if it is a foreclosure, so not a regular deal, it's something you want to write down. You leave this whole section blank. Okay. On different foreclosures, different banks, they don't want to pay for surveys. Sometimes they will pay for surveys. Sometimes, a lot of times they just don't. They don't even want this filled out. So on offers with foreclosure, you can try if you want to, but general rule is we just go ahead and leave this blank. Okay. D, objections. So what you want to do here is you want to put 3 days. Okay. So typically we'll put 3 days there. Basically allowing the buyer to object, to be able to have the opportunity to object to the survey if they need to. Okay. Here it says membership in Property Owners Association. This is what's known as the HOA, a homeowners association. Most of the time in the MLS, it's going to state whether or not the property is an HOA. So you're just going to check this, the first one if it is, the second one if it isn't. Okay, and if it is, then there's a form that has to go along with the contract. Looking on that page. Okay. So 7, property condition. So this basically just says that the seller has to allow the buyer to be able to do inspections on the property. Okay. B states seller disclosure. Okay, so on regular deals, sellers have to provide a form or a document called a seller disclosure where they pretty much let the buyer know what, give the buyer additional information as far as what they know about the property, its history. So if that form is attached in additional information in MLS, top right, then you'll check this one that we've already received it, you've downloaded it, the buyer's seen it. You'll check that one. If there isn't one, or you can't find one, or it hasn't been filled out, then you're going to check this one. Buyer has not received the notice, and you're going to put 3 days. Okay. Basically, hey, we're making this offer. We haven't gotten this disclosure yet, but we'd like you to finish filling it out and send it to us so we within 3 days. Okay. This one is what you fill out when anytime it's a foreclosure, because since the bank never lived in the property, they're not required to give a seller's disclosure. Also, if it's like an estate sale or probate, things like that. So anytime you're dealing with a situation where you know the people never lived in the house, not an investor, not flipping a house, but like a foreclosure, like someone died, a probate, an estate sale, things like that, that's when you check this one. But anytime you're not sure, just ask your agent or the broker. Let's see, D, acceptance of property condition as is. So a lot of people get confused with this. They think if you click buyer accepts the property as is, that means that there's no negotiations, or if you do the inspection, I have to fix it. They know. What this means is that the offer that we're making is based on as is, meaning the offer is based on what we see. Okay. As you saw above, we're still able to do inspections and have the ability to negotiate and things like that. But again, this is just saying this offer is based on as is. Let me show a difference. This one says the buyer accepts the property as is provided by the seller, but at the seller's expense, they shall complete. They shall make sure that electrical work is, or electrical in kitchen is repaired. Okay. So what that means is, hey, this is our offer based on you fixing the lights in the kitchen because we know they don't work just from the first time we went to see the house. Okay. So that's what that is. A lot of people get confused. Don't get confused. You're still able to do inspections. You're still able to negotiate. But it just basically says on what basis is this offer, on. Residential service contracts. Okay. This is like a home warranty. So the buyer has the ability to negotiate with the seller to give them money to get a home warranty that will cover some basic appliances and things like that for a year. So typically, I think now we put like $550 there, just because that's the policy we like our clients to get. But you could put 0. So on normal deals, regular deals, we'll put $550. Make a note of that. On foreclosures, we just did that blank. They ain't paying for the home warranty. They know you're getting a lot of equity and you need to be fixing it up yourself anyway. Okay. 9. Closing. So this is the closing date. So it gives you calendars. So pretty much for the local lenders that we use, most of them are able to close deals in 30 to let's say 40 days. So you just want to time it appropriately. Also discuss it with your client. Let's just say I picked this date. There you go. Okay. For some of the bigger banks, Wells Fargo, Chase, those banks, sometimes they need longer, more like, 35 to 45 days or something. 40 to 45 days, 45 to 60 days sometimes. Okay, possession. So most of the time we always just check this one. If we know that the buyer is not going to take possession of the property until the deal funds. We would check this one if we know that the seller or the buyer have worked out or willing to work out a temporary lease agreement, meaning the closing hasn't happened yet, but someone's either going to stay longer in the property or someone's going to move into the property before the deal is actually funded. Special provisions. This is where just any kind of main notes that we want everyone to be aware of. So for example, let's say it was a deal where we said buyer paying for all 2017 taxes. Right. So that's a note for everyone to know that the taxes, when the sale happens, aren't going to be prorated. They're going to be the buyer's going to pay for them all, or something else. So just important thing that you just want to make sure that everyone sees and notices. Okay. Settlement and other expenses. So this is a part where you put if the buyer is trying to negotiate receiving closing costs from the seller. So basically, in negotiation, if the buyer, so there's down payment fees that the buyer pays for, and there's closing cost fees that the buyer pays for. And this is where the buyer would ask the seller from the profit of the deal on the day of closing. They're asking, again, not where the seller pays for the front or out of their pocket, but from the profit of the deal, the buyer is asking the seller to give them an amount to go towards to help the buyer basically pay their own closing costs. And so if you put something like 3,000 here, this basically says seller shall also pay an amount not to exceed 3,000 to be applied in the following order. And it basically is the buyer's expenses. Okay. Now if the buyer's expenses are 5,000, the title company only takes this amount, 3,000. If the buyer's expenses are say 2,000, and this says 3,000, the title company is only supposed to take out 2,000. It's up to not to exceed, but it's only for their closing costs. So if the closing costs are only 2,000, then they're only supposed to use 2,000. But if they're 5,000, then they can only use up to 3,000. Okay. Let's see here, another one on that page. 21 notices. So this is where this is basically information for the title company to know where to send correspondence, where to send information to. So you can have the seller fill this out. You can have the buyer fill this out with the buyer's information. Pretty self-explanatory. This is any documents that you're including with the contract. So going back to the first page, if you're going to loan from a bank, you're going to want to include a third-party financing addendum. If you're doing owner finance, you want to include that one. If there's an HOA, you want to include this one. So on and so forth. Okay, this one's for lead-based paint. The house is older than 1978. Okay. Termination option. So this is basically where we negotiate an option period. So buyers can agree to pay a seller, let's say for example, $100. That's our standard for 10 days. Okay. So they're paying $100 for 10 days to have the unrestricted right to cancel the deal and get the buyer gets their earnest money back. And we typically always put that they will that this fee, $100, will go towards the sales price or go towards the down payment. Okay. Here's the information you're going to put if there's an attorney involved. Okay. This is the part where the deal gets executed. Executed means that once both parties sign, the agent whose client signed last, meaning let's say the buyer signed first and then the seller signs last. Okay, that agent is the one that puts in the date that the seller signed. Okay, let's say the seller signed first. Let's say the buyer signed first, the seller signed second, but they made some changes, so they had to go back to the buyer for some corrections or some initiating some corrections. Then the buyer technically signed last by the time that the contract was ready to go and be executed. So that agent is the one that fills in these dates. Okay, the day that the day that they were signed and corrected or initially. Okay? Buyer seller sign there. And then page 9 is where you fill out the brokerage information. Okay. Uh, yeah, here's where you fill out the brokerage information, and this will be the name of the brokerage license number. If you're only representing the buyer, you click that. If you're representing both, then you click that. Or if you're the seller's listing broker sub agent, check that one. You put the name of the agent here with their license number. You put their supervisor if there is one, license number, the address of the brokerage, city, state, zip, the agent's email address, phone number, and then on the buying side, never, ever, 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 because you will be fired, ever, ever, ever forget to put our commission here, and it's typically 3%. Okay, so just so you know, the 3%, you got to put a space bar, 3, and then the percent for the forms. Okay, that's pretty much it from the 1 to 4. Just wanted to run through that for you real quick. This is just the option fee receipt. That's later once the checks are turned in. This is the earnest money receipt. How the company does that. But like I said, just want you to have an idea as far as how this works. And feel free to ask any questions if you need to. Okay, thanks.